Hello and welcome to the semifinal edition of the VST Weekly Roundup. As always, I'm Marsha Versarian. I've got Kenny Hodges with me. We got Kaylee Harden joining us again. And we're just going to jump right into it because there is so much meat on this bone. It was just amazing, amazing football all throughout. And we're going to start at the top. The defending, reigning, undisputed city champions, Birmingham Patriots, are going to defend their title because they ran over Banning 42-7. Uh, don't call Kenny and I geniuses yet, but we said if Birmingham got past Venice, they were getting into the final. And we didn't see anybody in that second round giving them a challenge. Over in D1, we had a open division we had a West Valley League rematch, and it didn't live up to much of the hype we thought it might. But Granada Hills did what they've been doing to almost everybody this year, and they ran over Cleveland 48-12. We'll get into that in depth in a little bit. Over in D2, we had a hope and promise kept. Kennedy ran over Marquez 49-20 and literally ran over with their running game. And Panorama defeated Bell 19-6. Again, we'll go into it deeper later, but that sets up an exciting matchup for the city final in D2. And in D3, Kenny's own word, geniosity, shone through. Unfortunately, Chatsworth fell. In that sense, it was Wilson 28, Chatsworth 27, and Wilson will play in the D3 final. In the southern section, Calabasas lost a heartbreaker in D6 to San Jacinto 14-15. That came down to the very end. In D2, Chaminade was at Inglewood, and this one went to overtime. And Chaminade seemed out of gas at the very end. 41-38 Inglewood. And Sierra Canyon at Bishop Amat in a huge rematch. Sierra Canyon came out on top 29-23. And the last one in our recap is the 8-man final. This was an all-valley matchup. This was exciting, and I'll go a little deeper into it in a moment. But your 8-man champions are the Fulton Jaguars, 38-28 over the North Valley Military Institute Hawks. That was exciting. But Kenny, you got some more notes.
So notes around the valley. Let's start right in the city section. And Bannon and Birmingham beating up on Bannon 42-7. What more can you say about the Patriots? Another dominant defensive performance. And like we had talked about over the course of the year, that quarterback was young. He's a sophomore, but he is extremely and superbly talented. You better get him before he figures it out. It might be too late. I think the young man has it figured it out. And look out for them to go ahead and roll through and try to put another city championship on the mantelpiece. But they're going to have a tough one in the championship, but we'll kind of get into that in the look ahead. Granada and Cleveland. Granada 48, Cleveland 12. Another dominant performance for this Granada Hills team. We'll kind of get into it in depth, but beyond the rushing numbers and the flashy plays, this game came down to the play of that old offensive and defensive lines. And Granada just kind of showing you that they are the dominant force to be dealt with in the Division One. On to Division Two with Kennedy 49, Marquez 20. Kennedy's offense is looking outright unstoppable in the postseason. How unstoppable? Their last two contests against Taft and Marquez, 99 points combined in those two contests, 892 yards on the ground, 13 rushing touchdowns. That's how dominant they've been. They have just trampled over their competition in the postseason. But what's going to be waiting for them? The Panorama Pythons, living up to their name, suffocating teams in the postseason. Did it again to Bell. 19-6 final. Python's defense continues to strangle everyone. They're holding teams to 11.3 points per game through these 3 games on their way to the championship. D3, I've been saying it all year. I love this Chatsworth team. I think they're supremely talented. I think there's a bright future ahead. But we kind of talked this year a little bit about some of the difficulties that Street has had, where maybe some of the position coaching just hasn't been there because they just haven't had the numbers staff wise, which kind of leads to miscues at some bad times for them. This game ended up proving that out. They had a lead late. They missed the PAT, left the door open for Wilson. Wilson went down the field on them. And what you get, a 28-27 heartbreaking loss, and Chatsworth will miss out on a chance at a Division III championship. Yes, and we kind of talked about in the 8-man championship, and Archer is going to get into it, but some early game miscues for NVMI and some undisciplined play kind of put them in a hole that was kind of hard for them to climb out of. But Archer will get into that more. On to the southern section. Calabasas and San Jacinto. What a heartbreaking, a crushing loss for them. Calabasas had kind of control of that game late in the second half, but some miscues or some miscommunication on the back end of that defense allowed San Jacinto to go down the field and literally score a touchdown at the 2-point conversion with just about no time left on the clock, and that's how Calabasas' season will end. In D2, Chaminade, 41-38 defeat at the hands of Inglewood. Just a heartbreaking loss. They tied that game with about 30 seconds of play, got the 2-point conversion, forced it to overtime, got the ball first in the overtime, got a field goal, but the defense just didn't have much left in the tank. Inglewood goes in, gets the touchdown, and all she wrote for Chaminade. A good season for the Chaminade Eagles, but a heartbreaking way to lose right before the championship. Sierra Kane and Bishop Amat, that game lived up to the hype, especially coming off the heels of their regular season game that was a 31-28 overtime win for Bishop Amat. The Trailblazers got their revenge, and they staved off the Lancers late, who tried to rally to win the game, try to steal one from Sierra Kane again, but on the backs of Dane Dunn's, the sophomore running back's superb running the second half of the year, he's trampling his way into the Division II championship in the southern section for Sierra Canyon. So now let's go to brackets by the numbers. We've got 4 Valley programs remaining going into championship week. And the Valley will be represented in 3 of the 4 championship games. Due to Chatsworth losing, we won't have a rep in the D3 championship, but that's the only one of the championship games that we won't have a Valley team in. Birmingham's in the open, Granada's in Division I, and we get the Kennedy Panorama Division II matchup. We're guaranteed one Valley team will be a city champion by virtue of that Kennedy Panorama matchup in D2. Last season, the Valley claimed 3 of the 4 city titles, which still can happen if Birmingham and Granada win their games. Overall, it was a strong showing by the Valley in the postseason as a whole, as Valley schools produced the 18-13 record across the 4 divisions in the postseason coming into championship week. So good on the teams in the Valley for showing out well and showing that there's strength in the Valley, and there's some quality teams out here, and they all did well. And congratulations to everybody who made waves in the postseason.
Definitely, it was. I mean, there's still games to play next week. That's the cap on an amazing season, and we'll give it its due when the time is right. But I'm gonna jump right into that 8-man final. It was awesome. I mean, from the atmosphere to the 2 teams actually playing in it, it was enjoyable. And I'll be honest, it was my first 8-man experience actually being there live. So it took me a quick minute to get acclimated. But for anyone who's watching that's never seen an 8-man game, it's a little different, but it's the same game. And it is exciting as hell. I'm going to give a little bit of background on the 2 teams that played, because these are not your fly-by-night programs. North Valley Military Institute was the number 2 seeded team in these playoffs. This was their third straight appearance in the final, with COVID breaking up a season in between. So 19, 21, and now 22. Uh, that 2019 game was the highest scoring game in CIF history. And we're not just talking, we're talking football, period. Um, it was actually the highest scoring game at halftime. They had broken the record. But that finished with Animal Robinson 92, NVMI 84. That'd be worth looking to try to find some highlights of that one, huh? And then last season, Sotomayor just took it. It was no question that was a beating. It was 40-0. Um, but an interesting note on the previous season, they were. It was similar, to this. They only had 2 or 3 losses going in, and they just keep building on what they've done before. It kind of reminds me of the LA Galaxy in the early 2000s. I think they went to the final 4 years in a row, and they won it the fourth year. Um, I did joke with the North Valley coach before the game, that he, hoping to break that Galaxy syndrome. Might have jinxed them. I'll own that if it comes down. Sorry, I didn't. Oops. um, but then for Fulton, this is a team that won their last championship in 2014, and that 2014 team was coached by Sean Jackson of Verdugo Hills now. Um, and he's told me, and we've said it here on the pod, that he his fingers need another ring, and it's been a long time since he won that one. And here's hoping he can find his way in the near future. But back to Fulton, in that 2019 season where North Valley broke and Animal broke that record, Fulton lost to North Valley 34-28 in the semis. So these are programs that know each other, and they've been familiar in the playoffs, and that kind of showed, with the seniors kind of butting heads uh, throughout the match. But I have to say the two big themes of this was discipline on both sides. Bolton very disciplined, and they played to their game plan. And North Valley Military just didn't have the discipline necessary to win a game like this. Um, I did not keep track of penalties, but it feels like there was a dozen encroachment offside penalties. It feels like it because it seemed like every time Fulton was in a third and medium to go, third and four, third and five, they would hard snap and get an encroachment penalty. Just it seems like every single time. Um, Emotion started getting the better of some of the Hawks players early on, and it really was kind of a grind to get things going. And heck, there was even a moment where the game was really delayed after a penalty, and then they threw another penalty. This one was on the sideline of North Valley, and it really kind of pushed things. And it was after, actually, hold on, I have it right here. It was in the first half. It was after Fulton had taken a 2-score lead at 22-8, and after the score, you had a unnecessary roughness, and then they flagged the sideline for unsportsmanlike. And that allowed Fulton to pin them deep And but the interesting thing is North Valley almost came out of that. They marched the field, and if it wasn't for an interception deep in Fulton territory, they would have gone in a halftime down one score. But that Fulton defense was just standing tall the whole time. Uh, I do have to give credit. The other note I was saying that stood out was the line play. That Fulton line gave the D line gave the North Valley quarterback almost no time to throw at all, and their O line was just making room for their running backs. Dylan Rojas was their bell cow. He had the ball 31 times, went 154 yards with 2 touchdowns. Emmanuel Martinez was lined up at quarterback, but he's not listed as a quarterback on the roster. He ran the ball 11 times, 72 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was kind of their quick, shifty change of pace behind Rojas. And he kind of had to be more behind Aaron Calica, who carried the ball 10 times for 80 yards. Unfortunately, uh, after all the kind of tensions rising throughout part of the game, Calica got ejected. And it was a moment that I not really sure should have been an ejection. I no, I'm gonna stand on it. I'm not gonna waffle. You know, I don't believe it should have been an ejection. Not criticizing the official. That was his decision. It was his vantage point. Um, but from where I was standing, hard tackle. They're tussling for the ball, and Caliga just rips away. Doesn't say anything. I don't hear him say anything. I wasn't that far. He just pulled away, and that led to the flag and the ejection. I didn't hear an explanation as to why they ejected him. But he was tossed, and that was most likely why Rojas ended up with 31 carries because they had kind of been alternating up until that point between those two. But halftime comes and North Valley comes out firing. They wasted no time trying to make a stop and make a statement, and they did. They came out and they looked more disciplined for the most part. Um, and then they made a game of it. They got into within one score, and it was it became a dogfight at the end. Like who's going to get that big stop to make to take home a championship? And there was a moment where they scored kind of back to back to back. It started with a rushing touchdown to get North Valley back in the game, and then you had a big rush from Martinez, and that was his second touchdown of the game. That was a 34-yarder. But North Valley answered right back, literally 23 seconds later, with a 7-yard touchdown. But that came on the heels of a couple big passes that led up to that touchdown. You had a 32-yarder, and then before you had the 48-yarders. They were just boom, boom, we're going to march the field and then hit and score. But unfortunately for North Valley, their defense could not stop the run game. And every time Fulton came down, they would just chew off the clock. Because after that score, it was 30-22. One score, defense has got to get a stop. But Fulton, leaning on Rojas and Martinez, chewed up almost 5 minutes of the clock, and now you're at under 6 minutes to go, and they scored again. It was Rojas' second touchdown, and now it's a 16-point game with 6 minutes to go. Credit again to North Valley. They found a way. They marched the field. They got another touchdown, and this was a big bomb, 21-yarder. And all they had to do, and this was the Fulton coach was yelling at his team, get the stop. He actually used his last timeout for this. He called the timeout after the touchdown. He told his team, he goes, just relax, stop the 2-point conversion, and they can't do anything because they'll be down 10 points. Now, if they score the 2-point conversion, they have a chance to tie. So just stop the 2-point conversion. And they did. And onside kick comes. There's no timeouts left for North Valley. And 2 knees later, Fulton has won its first title since 2014. Congratulations to the team. Congratulations to Coach Luna. That was an incredible game by any standard. And it looks like both teams are young, so they might run it back. That's exciting. But yeah, congratulations to the Hawks. They had a great season. I confirmed with Coach after the season they're only losing a couple consequential players. Their quarterback's a senior. But basically everyone else that they lean on is a junior or sophomore. And it looks like it's the same with Fulton. So we could see these two teams again next year.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is back to that reference that you said about being the Galaxy. You'd rather be the Galaxy than be the Buffalo Bills, right? So at the end of the day, kudos to Fulton for getting to this point and getting the job done. That would have probably weighed heavy on that staff and those kids to get back to this point and not finish the deal. There was a bit of, you could tell there was a bit of just objectively kind of watching, you could see the determination with those kids, even how they ran the ball, how physical they were, that there was a concerted effort to make sure that they got this one done, that they weren't going to get turned away again. And that may have played against NVMI a little bit because one team clearly felt, especially in the early goings, even with both teams making a lot of mistakes and a lot of things kind of going on that, discipline wise, that you wish both teams would have cleaned up a bit. But you could see that there was a different level of focus with Fulton and how they were moving that ball and how physical they were at the point of attack that had NVMI on his heels at various points of the game, which ultimately was the reason they kind of came out on top. So kudos and congratulations to them. And yeah, this could be a prelude to seeing this game happen again next year. So yeah, good on Fulton for finishing the deal.
And from the championship game to the semifinal, our game of the week was Cleveland visiting Granada. This was the West Valley League rematch that we were excited about. I have to admit, it's not the one I predicted in my bracket. But it was one that still got us very excited the moment we saw it could happen. The headline in our heads, at least here with us, was a rematch: Corey Hall versus Dijon Stanley. How often is Corey Hall going to stick his nose into the run game and try to lay a bucket on somebody? And are they going to be able to tire out that defense on the Granada side so that Cleveland can do something on offense? Let's just say one team's game plan went according to plan, and the other Still looking for a little bit of answers. Um, Good game all around. But we're gonna have Kaylee take over and start us off here. Kaylee.
So it's no secret. I love both these teams a lot. They've always been like so nice, welcoming, like good spirited on the sideline. And honestly, that's what you look for in a championship program is just a good team chemistry and a team that's there to have fun, right? Because that winning's fun, but losing isn't so much. But all around, this game was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and I was really excited for this matchup again because after I saw that during the regular season, I had to see it again. But right out the gate, I think both teams showed that they did not come to play around. Granada and Cleveland both scored really quickly. Granada got a 2-point conversion, so they were up by 2. And then things started getting really heated. Like I think from the jump, tensions were just super high. Obviously, it's the semifinals, so it's not going to be a cakewalk, or no, they're not going to hold hands. But there was a lot of trash talking, like a lot of trash talking, so much so that the refs weren't able to catch it all, and or either that or they were just ignoring some of it, and so both teams were getting pretty pissed off. There was a couple late hits at one point by Pierre O'Bannon that really got Cleveland revved up. And so on third down, they sent Corey Hall after him, and Corey Hall put that man in the dirt, like straight up. And after that, after seeing that part of the game, I was like, oh, this is gonna be good. So after that, Corey Hall really just unleashed the beast on all of Granada. And I would say that Dejan Stanley got a good taste of it too. There was a couple scores for Granada in the first quarter still where Corey was tackling him on first or second down, but then by third or fourth, Dejan was completing in the end zone, and the maniacal laugh that he let out, I would have thought that I was in the Joker movie because he was having fun with it, and he was honestly dangling it in front of Cleveland. Like, it doesn't matter how good you play. It doesn't matter if it's the semifinals. I'm going to ball out, and Granada's going to the next round. So good for Dejan on that one because that was not an easy game. And in most games where, it is just the Stanley show or, those two stars are shining bright, they had to work for it. They definitely had to work for it this game. It was a slugfest throughout. And I don't think that the score at any point in the game really represented the physicality that was going on the field and in front of my eyes. It looked like it hurt to be in that game. And Granada, despite having a 36-point win, they got beat. They definitely took a couple hits and they got beat up a little bit. It was the most entertaining 36-point loss game that I've ever seen. It was hard to look away because even though you kind of knew from the beginning, I mean, even from halftime, Granada was up 32-6. Even with that deficit, you still couldn't look away because it seemed like every play something happened that I was like, ooh, wow, woohoo. But even after halftime, like Cleveland was not going down without a fight. They came out of the gate, they scored again, made the game exciting all over again. They kind of teased that maybe the game might not be over, but unfortunately for Cleveland's offense, they just couldn't break past the Granada line enough times to get one in the end zone. So, like I said, there was a pretty big score deficit. And so Corey just kept on laying into the on defense. Even though he wasn't completing as much on offense this game, he showed up on defense for sure. So much so that I feel like Granada's strategy of gameplay kind of changed a little bit. They weren't relying so heavily on the Stanleys as they usually do. I mean, obviously they still had a great game, but like I said, it wasn't the Stanley show and it wasn't an absolute blowout or cakewalk. He definitely did his job on defense. I think overall, this game compared to the league play game was a way better matchup. I mean, I wish that we could play it again. But Dejan is off to Utah next year, but Corey Hall, he'll still be in the Valley, hopefully. So, I mean, we're going to get more and more of this type of physicality and competitiveness next year, which I'm really happy about. And congrats to Granada on the win.
I mean, Smash Mouth football is fun football. I completely agree. And Kenny says he doesn't like the high scoring, high flying games.
No, listen. I don't have a problem with high scoring games, but there's something to be said, and you can say it about this particular game because y'all was on the sideline, and my vantage point was different because I was watching it. I was live streaming it. But even with on a live stream, you can tell, and this is completely to Cleveland's credit, despite coming up on the losing end of a 48-12 game. You could tell from the outset that this team came into this game like whether we win or we lose, we coming in here to whoop somebody's ass.
Win or lose, we laying some bruises.
We are whooping somebody getting it. They walked into that stadium with a mindset of we don't know. You got to play the game to figure out what the outcome is. But the one thing that we can control is I'm whooping somebody's ass today. That's what I control. It's the beautiful thing and the most frustrating thing, and I tell this to my son, been saying it to him all season long, is there's going to be games you win, there's going to be games you lose, but football is a beautiful sport because you do those things together because it's 11 people on the field, or if you play 8-man, it's 8 people on the field. It's never just one guy. Even if, like, for instance, with Granada, yes, Dejan is going to get the attention because he's the one breaking these runs and he's looking fly when he's doing it. But there's big boys up front that are knocking somebody in the face that's giving him lanes to run through. He's got receivers on the outside that are holding blocks and sealing the edges so he can take off and go 70 yards. It's a team game, and you got to line up against your matchup, but you always play together. And talking about matchups, the thing that stood out to me from this game, when you're talking about mano-a-mano football, when you're talking about two guys that know full well, if you put together a finalist list of city section players of the game of the year, the two names at the top of that list are going to be Dejan Stanley and Corey Hall because of what they've done this year. And these two dudes are lined up against each other. And let me tell you something. It's not even just about the runs. It's not even just about like the hits on the sideline. The things that I was watching in this game that were entertaining to me is when stuff was happening away from the play. A running play's going to the left. Corey Hall and Dejan are lined up on the right. The play's not even going that way. But Corey's going to block Dejan, and he's trying to drive him 7 yards out of bounds. And they wrestling like two grizzly bears and going at each other and talking smack. They ain't even had nothing to do with the play. But right now in this moment, it's about me versus you. And yeah, you think you're going to put me on the ground because that's what happens when you're a DB and you got a wide receiver, you know it's coming to block you. He's trying to put you on the ground just so he can say, I won this rep. I won this battle. They went at it all night. To the point that I was almost a little frustrated with Cleveland because I felt like if you could see that they were putting Dejan on an island with Corey, you got to move him around a little bit, change up the look. Don't make it so easy for Dejan to just kind of line up on him one-on-one and just kind of the only way Corey was getting open was having to hit double moves and stuff like that. So there's some strategy things I think that Cleveland, in hindsight, probably could do a little different. That probably might have helped Corey get off a little bit. But whether he got off or not, he was getting off. He was getting off on Dejan. He was getting off on guys and on other guys. He came out there and he did whatever he could to ball out. And that's why I don't have it in front of me, but his tweet at the end of the night was, hey, I went out there and I played my heart out. I played my heart out tonight and I played my heart out all year. And I'm going to work hard and I'm going to be back. To me, that was the most chilling thing because it was somebody letting you know, all right, I came up on the short end of this, but y'all know my pedigree. Y'all seen it at this point. I'm coming back here. This ain't the last you heard from me. So that part of it was amazing. But in my geniosity, what I had talked about in the look ahead kind of played itself out because, like I said, we talk about the Chimera, we talk about these backs, we talk about Corey Hall, we talk about the stars. I said last week, if Cleveland was going to have any chance to play with this team up front, they were going to have to bring it. They were going to have their lunch pails. They were going to have to bring their hard hats, the lunch pails, the jackhammers, the tools, everything, because where Granada hurts you, yes, the flashy stats come from those running backs. But where this team has destroyed everyone this year is they got some monsters on their O-line and D-line. Last time these two teams played, the reason why it wasn't much of a game is because Cleveland couldn't do anything. 15 tackles for loss from that Granada D-line. They were in the backfield the whole night. Would Cleveland be able to kind of turn that around and create some space for Donovan Powell? And they just couldn't. He just couldn't get off because they were still living in the backfield. So the football games are always going to be won and lost up front first before anything else. And they just couldn't do anything with that Granada front.
I think in the same conversation when we were doing our looking ahead and we were talking about this game specifically, I had said that it would be possible for this game to be competitive, and I would even entertain the idea that potentially Cleveland could win the game if Cleveland's talent showed up deep and in competitive enough depth to be able to hang with Granada, because Granada's team is so deep and their talent does run far beyond just whatever they have on the field. There's always talent coming off the sideline too, for Granada. And if Cleveland is Gotham City, Corey Hall was their Batman like on Friday night. He was hawking them out of the sky. Like, it was really impressive to see the amount of heart that he played with, again, despite the score gap that was there from the very beginning of the game. And to a testament to Granada's depth and talent, aside from the Stanleys, who, like I said, were not the star of the show this game, DJ Richmond had an amazing game, and I want to give him a shout out because he played an awesome game. He went, 140 yards with 14 carries? I think Arshvir has a stat on that. 133 on 14 carries. So shout out DJ Richmond. Great game. It was awesome to watch. Thank you to both sidelines for, having me and letting me be the little eye in the sky all around the field. I appreciate it. Much love. I can't wait to hang out with you again next season.
Yeah, and to put a bow on Cleveland's campaign a little bit, it's nothing to sneeze at for a team with the sort of expectation they have put on themselves this year to get to the semifinal round against a team that and lose to a team that we all look at as having open division type talent on it. That doesn't deter or take anything away from the season they had. This is a team that had some really high highs this year, including taking down Palisades, who were the number 2 team in the entire city at the time when they beat them. I think the thing for them going out now, having their season finish up, question for them next year is, you still have Corey Hall next year as a senior. And if he was like this year, good God, what is he going to do next year? But the question for them has to be, you have to develop that depth alongside of him. You got to continue to develop the depth on that line to be able to compete with the bigger teams. You got to develop other weapons on the outside. You got to find a 1-2 combination coming out of that backfield. The question for them is going to be, if you've got a diamond on your team like him, you've got to fill out the rest behind it. And yeah, players are going to come and go from teams, if that's the nature of high school football. But the depth that you have, you got to bring them up closer to his level so you can then be able to take out the Granadas of the world and maybe then win a city championship before he takes off for whatever school, because he's going to go wherever the hell he wants after next season. So, yeah, so good on them. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of that team develops around him in this offseason. And congratulations to them on a good season.
And to wrap it all up, I did want to mention the conversation I had with Coach Brooks after the game where we talked about the line. Um, I did want to focus on the line when I was talking to him, but he kind of preempted me when we were talking about his reflections. He brought up the line and was like, rightfully so, Dijon and Darrell get the headlines because they are special talents. But he said, I have to give love to my line. If they don't work and they don't open these holes and they don't block, there isn't anything. Dijon doesn't do 155 yards on 18 carries if they don't block. He probably still gets, some of these big chunks because he's that talented, but he doesn't do 155 on 18. DJ doesn't do 133 on 14 if they don't block for him. He had a big 50-yarder, but if that hole isn't there for him to hit, I don't think he goes 50 yards for the touchdown. The hole has to be there. The line has to make it. And then on the flip side, you've been talking about Hexamer and Taylor all season. They lived in the backfield again. I was looking at it, and we were talking about Corey. He only had 5 targets for the top offensive/defensive player on your team to only have 5 targets. Well, why does he only have 5 targets? Well, you said part of it is because he was on an island with Dijon. And the other part is Nano had no time. Mm-hmm. Nano Lopez into the 3-step drop. By step 2, they were in his face most of the time. Look, he went 7 for 20. That's ridiculous. And if we eliminate the first pass of the game, which was a slant that Shackelford took 67 yards to the house, he was 6 of 19.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other really big passing play was a 37-yarder to Corey. And I mean, we talked about it. You give Corey a chance to do something, he's going to do it. And he still made his play on offense. Down the sideline, the ball was perfectly thrown over Dijon. And Corey did what Corey does. He made a beautiful catch, right? But outside of that, on offense, he didn't do much. And so that defense, the front especially, has to get its due. I mean, they finished with 3 sacks, and they were all big sacks. So, as much as, again, we talked about it, and it goes to what you've said a few times, the trenches are where the game is won. It's what makes everything else possible. And so that I want to wrap it with that, because it leads literally into the next point when we're talking about the player of the week. Because games that are won and lost in the trenches usually have a running back who's going to do something. Granada has multiple. Our player of the week has been, I'm going to say it, he's found God mode in the playoffs. Gabe Argott for Kennedy. This week he went for 229 and 2 touchdowns. Kenny, you said he's well over 600 yards in the 3 games on the stats you have. That is absolutely ridiculous. And he is the focal point of this fast and furious running game. Give him the ball, he'll hit, and then they pop up and go again.
Yeah, for sure. And he's a bit of an unsung hero, right? Because he's not the guy who is the flashy one-cut runner, Dijon, Darrell Stanley type runner who's a flashy one-cut runner, gets to the second level and then turn on the Jets. No, he is quite the opposite. He's the guy you give the ball to kind of chisel away at the opponent's defensive front, and he's the guy who measures the manhood of the defensive front that he's going against, because he's the guy that you figure out fairly quickly how much do you want to tackle tonight, because this is not a guy that's trying to run around people. His job in that Kennedy offense is to hit you straight in your face mask and make you see stars, and then decide if you want to come back and do it. Oh, and by the way, because they go fast break, by the time you peel your ass off the ground, he's already back in the backfield because they're about to run the play again. You haven't even had a chance to catch your breath, and he's coming right back at you again the second time. I can't tell you how many times this season I've seen this kid literally have a chance to maybe go out of bounds, and instead of stepping out of bounds, he'll plant his left or right foot in the ground and look for the contact just to make you feel him and let you know that he's coming. Like I said, this man don't wear no gloves, just some wrist tape. He got nothing on his arms. He is jacked. He is all man when he's out there, which is a bit of a psychological thing in itself. When you see this kid coming, old school with no padding, no protection on, and he's toting the rock 25 times a game at least. And he's coming and he's banging and he's coming and he's banging on you. And he's banging on you. And he's banging on you the whole time. And I have literally watched him make teams quit. He made Marquez quit. He made Taft quit. So this is a kid that he hasn't gotten the due that he's deserved all year. He was early in the season when it was the tandem of him and Go Abramian, and now later in the year when it's kind of been him and Alonzo Fuentes. Like, for instance, last week, Fuentes got the 4 TDs, but a lot of the reason why he was able to kind of get those 4 TDs is because the work was already done. Taft didn't want anymore by the time he would get the ball. Like, and it was the same thing with Marquez. When you've got this guy who is actively looking to run you over every time he touches the ball, and then he'll run you over and keep going. Can't tell you how many times this year, and even in this Marquez game, where he's got a guy on his leg and he's just driving the pile and turning a 4-yard play into an 8-9-yard game. The guy deserves his due. He's deserved his due all year, but backs like him usually kind of get lost in the shuffle because it's not flashy. His runs are not going to pop on an Instagram reel like some other people's runs might, but everything he does takes a toll on the opponent. And the fact that he can run this way and get up and go do it again back to back, he deserves his due, and he deserves to be player of the week because, quite frankly, Kennedy has really put a lot on his shoulders this season, and more importantly in this playoffs, to get them to this point that they're at. And he has been a bell cow in every sense of the word. He leads the team in rushing attempts in the postseason. He leads the team in yards. So, Gabe Argott, we salute you. You're the player of the week because you are more man than everybody else.
And I'll touch a little more on the looking ahead, but that makes for an exciting final. As far as honorable mention, from the games that I was at, obviously, Dijon gets an honorable mention because he went 155 on 18. He had 3 touchdowns. He was doing Dijon things. DJ Richmond, Kaylee said it. He went 133 on 14. He had 2 touchdowns. He had that big 50-yard. So and the thing though, and Kaylee touched on it, is when they would stop Dijon or Darrell, and now you got 3rd down, you need the 1st down, they were giving the ball to DJ. He was the guy picking up key 1st downs, it seemed like the whole game. And when you got a guy you can rely on like that, and then he goes and puts up 133, he definitely deserves the honorable mention. And I've got 2 from Fulton. The Jaguars played a hell of a game. We talked about it. They leaned on their run game. I guess that's a theme for the teams in the playoffs this year. Again, Dylan Ross, he was the bell cow for Fulton. He had 31 carries, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. And got to throw in Emmanuel Martinez. 72 yards on 11 with 3 touchdowns. And so those are the ones that I have for honorable mention. Oh, and before I forget, that offensive and defensive line from Granada, because they set the tone.
And I'll throw one in from the southern section, just so there's no neglect there. Dane Dunn from Sierra Canyon, sophomore running back, has emerged as sort of the superstar for that team during the stretch. They don't play in this Division II championship if he didn't do the heroic things in this game for them. Whenever they got behind the chains or they needed a play in that game against Bishop Amat, he came through. He had 26 for 193 on the ground. He was the guy who made plays for them constantly. He put them in positions to score a lot of the time in that game. You take him off the field, Sierra Canyon might get walked through in that game against Bishop Amat, and it's kind of been that way in the second half of the year for them. Once they had a couple of kids they were giving the ball to, but he has kind of established himself as Sierra Canyon's number one weapon on offense. So we'll show a little love to Dane Dunn, the sophomore running back at Sierra Canyon. And he has really kind of been the catalyst to kind of carry them to the championship game in the Division II Southern section.
And that's going to take us to looking ahead, because we've got championship week on the docket. I'm gonna just read right into that, and Dunn is going to help lead his team into that championship game. They're hosting Inglewood, is what it looks like. I think they were the higher seed. It currently, as of our recording time, looks like the game is going to be at Sierra Canyon. We will know more when we know more, and obviously that'll be announced by Sierra and news outlets when that is known for sure. But Sierra and Inglewood for that Division II Southern Section title. Don't look now, but Sierra has a chance to knock off an undefeated Inglewood team. And so that's no joke. This Inglewood team is, I think they're 13-0.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I think it's going to be another dogfight, because we were expecting one with Chaminade and Sierra in a big rematch, and Inglewood outlasted them in the end. So this could be really, really interesting in terms of a slugfest for the title. And then into the city, in the open, we've said it. Birmingham, they are still, until they lose, the reigning defending Open Division champions. They're facing a Garfield team that has just stomped on their opponents. And from some of the people I've spoken to over the last couple of days, it seems as if I personally have been taking Garfield a little lightly with what they've done this season. But I mean, anytime you get into the final game, there is no taking you lightly. We had Birmingham losing in the final if they were facing San Pedro. I believed Eagle Rock was going to get past Garfield, and they could have beaten Birmingham. And I think this is going to be a really, really tight matchup. I think this is going to be one of the ones we come out talking about for a long time. Because if Garfield wins, that's going to be taking something for them. And then if Birmingham wins, now you've got a three-peat as Open Division. There's a lot riding on the line for this one. And then in D1, Granada Hills is going to be facing Palisades. Now, this isn't the same Palisades team that lost to Cleveland earlier in the season. They've put things together. They've kind of leaned into what they do, and they're coming. and they're probably thinking they have an answer. But like we've said, this is a chimera that has a brick wall in front of it. And if you can't get through that brick wall, they're going to run over you. And then on the other side, I'm going to call it the dogs of war, because Hexamer and Taylor just come at you from the ends, and this line doesn't stop. I believe Granada is going to take it. I do. In the initial one, I believed a rematch would have probably toppled them over. But looking at them now, week in and week out, and what they've done, the only way a team is going to beat them is going to be a really, really tight matchup. And it's going to be low scoring, because they're not going to allow Granada to do anything. If Granada's line is able to create space, I don't think they can be stopped. I don't. And I honestly think Granada could very well be our D1 champion. And then in D2, this one has me super excited. Just because our familiarity with these programs, everything we've seen them do throughout the season, and to set up this league rematch from the Valley Mission in a championship game. Ooh, it's going to be bad blood everywhere. These guys are going to smash mouth. I said it before we started recording. I think it's a 7 o'clock kickoff is what is initially scheduled. Even if it's 7:30, I can see this game being over in 60 minutes of real time, because they just run. I know for a fact the last time when I was covering Panorama, when they beat King Drew, they didn't attempt a single pass. So, and I know Coach Bernal will pass the ball if necessary. If necessary. But if that run game is working, he's not going to throw the ball. And Kennedy, their offense is built on, like you've dubbed it, it's fast and furious. And our guy's going to run the ball, get up, line up, and run again. And these two teams pride themselves on what they do on that line and in the run. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was a low-scoring game because they just smashed each other to pieces, or if they both kind of found holes and ran around each other. But I believe it's probably going to be more low-scoring. Panorama's defense doesn't allow much, if anything. I can see this being like a 14-8 type game, and I'm not gonna name it. I'm not gonna predict the winner. I'm not. I'm gonna leave that to you.
Okay. So here's my thing. So just quick fire, Birmingham. Like we talked about, that young boy, that Kingston Tisdale, man. We said it. This was the year. You better get him. Because if you don't get him, we might be looking at 4 straight with this kid at quarterback there. Because 5 straight. You know what I mean? So you're talking about a situation where this was potentially sort of a rebuild year for Birmingham. They had to figure out what they had with this young man at quarterback. And he had been saying since the beginning of the year, just give me a couple weeks. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be fine. Like the early season hiccups, he had said himself on Twitter, y'all don't worry. I got this. This is my team. I'm going to be good. And so lo and behold, we have got to the postseason, and this is his team. And he is fully capable of running the show. He knows he has Peyton Waters on the outside. This team is rolling. But like we said, Garfield is nothing to sneeze at. They are going to come into this game motivated. They have a chance with a win today to sort of kind of put a bow on a magical city season for them, right? Before they go and take their crack at states. This team won the East LA Classic. The Black Eyed Peas was performing at halftime. They got to play at the Coliseum. This has already been an amazing season for that program. Now they get to cap it with being the team that kind of topple the head of the king and take the throne. They're going to come into that game motivated to kind of get that done. And they probably feel a little disrespected at the fact that people were already going to look at Birmingham, even though Birmingham's the 7th seed, as the favorite, when they're like, hey, look at what we've done this year. Look at the teams we've had to play. Look at what we went through. So that game is going to be an awesome game. If there's any team that's built to kind of stop Birmingham, it's going to be them. But boy, if they don't, like I said, this reign may not be coming to an end anytime soon. Granada, you know what you got with Granada. This is a team that's the top seed in D1, but they got open talent. But so does Palisades. And like we've discussed, the only games they've lost this year were to Eagle Rock and to Birmingham, 2 teams who played in the Open. Eagle Rock was a game away from maybe playing in the Open Championship themselves. And the way you beat Granada is you've got to make them play your game. You got to have balance. You got to be able to defend those guys up front. You got to keep Oliver Taylor and Chance Hexamer from wrecking your game plan. And you got to have a little bit of balance. You got to be able to run the ball. You got to have weapons on the outside. And for Palisades, they actually kind of do. They have the ability to go down the field on you with their pass game. They've got a bell cow running back. They've got some big bodies up front on the O line and the D line. They might be able to make Granada have to play a game. Now, am I going to go away from Granada winning this game? No, I'm not. If for no other reason than with my own eyeballs, I watched Cleveland beat Palisades, and we just saw Granada beat Cleveland for the second time this year. So I'm not wavering off my pick. I still think Granada's going to get it done, but I would expect this to be more of a ball game than they've had to deal with so far in the playoffs. And as far as Division II, that Division II championship, come on, man. This is I've been talking about all year. Like I will talk about with Chavez. That's right. I snuck Chavez in here again. I'm going to sneak him in there one more time before football because I love that program. I love that coach. I love those kids. And they played their butts off all year. Did it translate into wins? No, but they left scars on the city section everywhere they went.
I knew we didn't hear the last of them.
That's right. So back to Kennedy and Panorama. That's what this game is going to be about. Who is going to knock who out? Both of these teams are steadfast in that what they do and how they win games. Kennedy's going to fast break you out of the try to run you off the field. Panorama's going to look at you and say, "Good luck trying that crap. We're not going to let you do it." And like I said, before we anoint Panorama as the team that's going to walk away with the championship, Kennedy outplayed them in the first half in that first matchup. Panorama outplayed them in the second half and hit big runs to take that game. But if you're Kennedy, you did not leave that game. When I was talking to that coaching staff, they did not leave that game feeling like they could not play with Panorama. They left that game feeling like if we did one or two things differently, if we made one or two more plays, and like I said, Troy Cassidy has coached in this postseason like a man that's not taking his foot off the gas pedal in the way he may have a couple of times in the second half of that Panorama game. I think he learned his lessons from that first game, and he's going to take those things he learned, and he's going to try to take it to this team in the championship, and I'm excited. That game is going to be amazing. It might be over in 72 minutes flat, but it's going to be amazing. It's going to be a dogfight. There's going to be bodies are going to hit the floor. It's going to be incredible. Gabe Argot's not going to have any sleeves, no matter what temperature it is. Dennis McKinley probably grew 2 more inches and gained 12 more pounds since last week because every time you see that kid, he gets bigger and bigger. So the game's going to be incredible. I can't wait to watch it.
We're naming names, and I'm over here sitting thinking, Pacheco plays outside linebacker on defense, and he's their bell cow on offense. And just he's going to be laying hats on somebody both ways. Like you said, Kinley is going to be laying hats on somebody both ways. And just this matchup is a football lover's matchup. Just through and through, old school. Those of you that watched football before it was a passing league, this is the game for you. 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but it's going to be on turf. So I guess 3 yards in pellets.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna do it like we've done last week, and I think this will be the third week we're doing it. We're naming the game of the week while we're recording because there is no other option at this point. There's great games out there, but this is the game of the week. Kennedy Panorama, D2 Championship. Bring it on and lay a hat on somebody. Let's go. And that wraps it up. That does. We could sit here and pontificate and wax poetic all day, but we got things to do. You got things to do. We got to get ready to watch these kids next week. This week, by the time you see this, but we've enjoyed every second of it, and these kids have made it all the more fun. And so, like we said last week, I don't care how cold it is at kickoff for this D2 game on Friday night. Grab your butt a blanket, get one of those blanket robes.
They sell
The
hot chocolate and
Snuggie.
cup noodles
They
at
sell hot
the
chocolate and
concession
cup of noodles.
stand.
This game's going to be at Birmingham, so there's probably going to be a food truck over there, maybe two, with hot food and beverages. Get something, keep yourself warm, get a Snuggie, and wrap up. But do not miss this game. Pack those damn stands at Birmingham on Friday. And for the two games on Saturday, Granada fans, get your butts out there. Fill those stands. We know Palisades travels. So you get out there and you equal that traveling squad. And we know Birmingham's going to show out. We expect them to, but still get your butt out there. Support these kids. It's the last game for somebody. I mean, we know for a fact in D2 it's the last game for a Valley team. And then for state, if you're not going to be driving 5 or 6 hours to watch them play, This is the game. Get out there, show your team some love, show these kids some love. That's why we do what we do, is to shine some love on these kids. Stop messing around. Get out there and watch them play.
Now I see you being nice about it. If y'all don't take y'all ass out there and go watch these kids, they've been out here busting their butts since the 2 days since the middle of the summer. Go out there and watch these children. They out here, they playing their butts off. Go watch these kids play. This everything they have worked for has been a culmination up to this. I don't care if you got a kid on the team. I don't care if you went to the high school. I don't care if you live down the block and you just need something to do on Friday or Saturday night. Go watch these games. Go support these kids, support these coaches, support these schools. Show these kids some love. Show them that what they're doing matters. Show them that the work they've put into this matters. And go out there and don't let the other side show you up. Listen. I'm talking to Panorama here, okay? I watch Kennedy a lot. I know they people show up. Don't let them outdo you. Listen, you got a chance. This is the chance for Panorama to walk away with their first city championship. Don't let them outdo y'all. Go out there and fill them stands up. Go watch this game, because the only thing that could be worse than losing in the championship is then having to sit there because there's only 18 of y'all and they got 500 people over there and they celebrating, and now you cold and you've been showed up. Go watch these kids play. Everybody. Just go on GoFan. The tickets ain't expensive. You spend more money on dumb stuff over the course of the next few weeks for Christmas. You gonna buy stuff for your kids that they ain't even gonna care about until February. Take a couple of them dollars and go watch these kids play on Friday and Saturday night. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Shoot, it's a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Come on. That's the ticket. It's a cup of coffee. It's your coffee run. Go watch them play. And we're going to put a bow on this. I'm going to say thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Go watch these kids play. We love you. We love them all. And we'll see you after the championships. And we're going to anoint some champions. Have a good one.
Peace out.